There is currently an epidemic of Bundibugyo in Central Africa. It started in the Democratic Republic of the Congo and it made its way to Uganda and South Sudan. We will be watching a video and then reading an article from WHO's website on what we just discussed.
An ambulance flanked by armed guards. Inside, the body of a victim suspected of dying from Ebola. This is how burials have to be carried out in Rwampara, which is in Ituri province, the epicenter of the current outbreak. Heightened security at a time of grief, essential to stop the usual funeral customs and keep the peace.
Arriving at the healthcare structure, we experienced a lot of difficulties, including resistance from young people in the community. So we were forced to alert the authorities so that they could come to our aid just for safety.
Violence has broken out in this town in recent days. People stormed the hospital and fire engulfed the isolation ward as they tried to take the body of a suspected Ebola victim and give them the burial they would usually have.
An Ebola patient is less dangerous than a person who has died from Ebola because the Ebola virus is a living virus. When someone is ill, the virus lives inside them. But when there is a death, the inner cells, the cells that die, bring the virus back to the surface where it remains on the periphery. That means that anyone who touches the body is inevitably contaminated.
The World Health Organization has raised the risk of Ebola to very high in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Epidemiologists are alarmed by the rapid rise. Take a look at this line that's almost vertical. This is what has scientists concerned. An estimate of the number of cases for the current outbreak in the DRC. The other lines show the first 100 days of previous outbreaks. So by comparison, you can see this one is sharply ahead. The deadliest outbreak, which lasted 2 years, killed more than 11,000 people. Dr. Ruth McCabe has been modelling cases up to twice a day.
The most notable thing about this outbreak is the size that it had gotten to before it had been detected. That's really what's quite unusual, and it is likely that the outbreak is larger than what is being reported just now, just because of those factors.
So even larger than the 800?
Indeed. Our modelling suggests it could be above 1,000 cases just now, but unfortunately at this current moment we can't actually rule out even as many as 2,000 cases.
It's over 30 degrees Celsius in Ituri province where these healthcare workers are getting ready for more Ebola patients. The African Centre for Disease Control has warned that 10 more countries in the region are at high risk. Countries around the world are continuing to clamp down too. The US warned DRC footballers travelling in for the World Cup they have to isolate for 21 days as the world tries to get a grip on an outbreak which has shown an alarming trajectory. Well, earlier I spoke to Dr. Eve Robinson, an epidemiologist working with Médecins Sans Frontières from Goma in eastern DRC. I asked her about the pressures healthcare workers are facing on the ground and how this outbreak compares to previous outbreaks.
Working in an Ebola centre is always going to be difficult. It requires really strict infection prevention control procedures, and people have seen the pictures of the staff all kitted out. It's quite warm here, so when you have all that PPE on, it's very difficult. So it's a very difficult situation for them. It is already a big outbreak compared to other outbreaks. It's likely really underestimated at this stage because there are difficulties in testing for it. So I think we are preparing for a large-scale outbreak.
And a large-scale outbreak in the DRC, how much more complicated is that by the fractured nature of what's going on politically, also a lot of people who are displaced? What does that look like? It's almost like a perfect storm almost, isn't it?
This is like a crisis on top of multiple other crises. Where I work in North Kivu, we've already been dealing with a large measles outbreak, cholera outbreaks. There's high rates of malnutrition, malaria is really common. So adding Ebola on top of this just makes the situation really difficult. And it's also really important that while a lot of focus is going to be on the Ebola disease outbreak, we can't forget these other needs.
We have seen that communities have set on fire healthcare facilities. What does that say about how the community feel about this Ebola outbreak?
So I'm aware of 2 incidences in Ituri province. I think it's a sign that the community are scared, and I think that's completely understandable. Ebola is controlled by working with and in the community, so you really need to engage with the community and gain their trust so that you can undertake all the control measures that are needed.
If you don't get the community's trust, what could happen?
It becomes really difficult to do those activities that are needed to control the outbreak, like contact tracing, like investigating any suspect cases. If communities don't let you into their towns and villages, you just can't do those activities.
Do you believe that there's enough being put into the community to stop the outbreak?
So MSF is really mobilising all its resources to Ituri, which is the current epicentre, and also North and South Kivu, where we expect further cases. We're working alongside the health authorities, and they really have a lot of experience. This is the 17th Ebola outbreak in the DRC, so the health authorities here really are the experts. But the scale of this already and the scale to come is beyond their ability to deal with it themselves, so they will really need support.
And just finally, Dr. Robinson, how worried are you about this outbreak?
So I'm worried for Ebola itself, and I'm also worried for the underlying humanitarian situation in the area, because the needs were already huge. And as all the focus goes towards Ebola, I'm worried that the other things will fall off the radar.
Dr. Robinson, thank you very much indeed for your time. Thank you.
Thanks.
We will now be reading WHO's Epidemic of Ebola Disease article. Pursuant to paragraph 2 of Article 12, determination of a public health emergency of international concern, including a pandemic emergency of the International Health Regulations 2005 IHR. The Director General of the World Health Organization, after having consulted the states parties where the event is known to be currently occurring, is hereby determining that the Ebola disease caused by Bundibugyo virus in the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Uganda constitutes a public health emergency of international concern, but does not meet the criteria of pandemic emergency as defined in the IHR. In his determination, the Director General of WHO has considered, inter alia, information provided by the states parties, the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Uganda, scientific principles as well as the available scientific evidence and other relevant information, and assessed the risks to human health, the risk of international spread of the disease, and of the risk of interference with international traffic. The Director General of WHO considers that the event meets the criteria of the definition of PHEIC contained in Article 1. Definitions of the IHR for the following reasons. Reason 1. The event is extraordinary for the following reasons. As of the 16th of May 2026, 8 laboratory confirmed cases, 246 suspected cases, and 80 suspected deaths have been reported in Ituri province of the Democratic Republic of the Congo across at least 3 health zones, including Bunia, Rwampara, and Mongbuala. In addition, 2 laboratory confirmed cases, including 1 death, with no apparent link to each other, have been reported in Kampala, Uganda, within 24 hours of each other, on 15th and 16th of May 2026, among 2 individuals traveling from the Democratic Republic of the Congo. A further case reported on the 16th of May, an individual returning from Ituri to Kinshasa has tested negative for Bundibugyo virus on confirmatory testing by INRB and is therefore not considered a confirmed case. Unusual clusters of community deaths with symptoms compatible with Bundibugyo virus disease have been reported across several health zones in Ituri, and suspected cases have been reported across Ituri and North Kivu. In addition, at least 4 deaths among healthcare workers in a clinical context suggestive of viral hemorrhagic fever have been reported from the affected area, raising concerns regarding healthcare-associated transmission, gaps in infection prevention and control measures, and the potential for amplification within health facilities. there are significant uncertainties to the true number of infected persons and geographic spread associated with this event at the present time. In addition, there is limited understanding of the epidemiological links with known or suspected cases. However, the high positivity rate of the initial samples collected, with 8 positives among 13 samples collected in various areas, the confirmation of cases in Kampala, the increasing trends in syndromic reporting of suspected cases, and clusters of deaths across the province of Italy all point towards a potentially much larger outbreak than what is currently being detected and reported, with significant local and regional risk of spread. Moreover, the ongoing insecurity, humanitarian crisis, high population mobility, the urban or semi-urban nature of the current hotspot, and the large network of informal healthcare facilities further compound the risk of spread, as well as witnessed during the large Ebola virus disease epidemic in North Kivu and Ituri provinces in 2018 through 19. However, unlike the Ebola Zaire strains, there are currently no approved Bundibugyo virus-specific therapeutics or vaccines. As such, this event is considered extraordinary. Reason number 2, the event constitutes a public health risk to other states, parties, through the international spread of disease. International spread has already been documented with 2 confirmed cases reported in Kampala, Uganda on 15th and 16th of May, following travel from the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Both confirmed cases were admitted to intensive care units in Kampala. Neighboring countries sharing land borders with the Democratic Republic of the Congo are considered at high risk for further spread due to population, mobility, trade, and travel linkages, and ongoing epidemiological uncertainty. Reason number 3. The event requires international coordination and cooperation to understand the extent of the outbreak, to coordinate surveillance, prevention, and response efforts, to scale up and strengthen operations, and ensure ability to implement control measures. The Director General of WHO, under the provisions of the IHR, will be convening an emergency committee as soon as possible to advise inter alia on the proposed temporary recommendation for the states parties to respond to the event. What is Ebola? On WHO's website, Ebola virus disease is a severe, often fatal illness affecting humans and other primates. The virus is transmitted to people from wild animals such as fruit bats, porcupines, and non-human primates, and then spreads in the human population through direct contact with blood, secretions, organs, or other bodily fluids of infected people, and with surfaces and materials, for example bedding and clothing, contaminated with these fluids. The average Ebola disease case fatality rate is around 50%. Case fatality rates have varied from 25 to 90% in past outbreaks. The first Ebola disease outbreaks occurred in remote villages in Central Africa, near tropical rainforests. The 2014 through 2016 Ebola virus disease outbreak in West Africa was the largest and most complex Ebola outbreak since the virus was first discovered in 1976. There were more cases and deaths in this outbreak than all others combined. It also spread between countries, starting in Guinea, then moving across land borders to Sierra Leone and Liberia. It is thought that the fruit bats of the Parapodidae family are natural hosts of the ortho-Ebola virus. What does the Bundibugyo virus do to you? We will find out in the article by World Health Organization. The incubation period for BVD ranges from 2 to 21 days, and individuals are usually not infectious until symptom onset. Early symptoms are nonspecific, including fever, fatigue, muscle pain, headache, and sore throat, which complicates clinical diagnosis and can delay detection. These progress to gastrointestinal symptoms, organ dysfunction, and in some cases, hemorrhagic manifestations. Case fatality rates in the past 2 BVD outbreaks reported in Uganda and in DRC in 2007 and 2012 have ranged from approximately 30% to 50%. Are there any vaccines for the Ebola strain Bundibugyo? We will find out in the next 2 clips.
Good afternoon. This is Preeti Patnaik from Geneva Health Files. I had 2 quick questions. One on whether the WHO is already suggesting any kind of existing drugs that can be repurposed, existing therapeutics. And second, can you explain to us how the interim medical countermeasures platform is working right now during Ebola? Is it underfunded, or what are the challenges because you don't have vaccine candidates? How is the ICM responding to Ebola? Thanks.
Thank you very much. I'm looking at the Chief Scientist, Dr. Vrion.
Yeah, so thank you very much for the question. And as Dr. Tedros said, there is already some drugs that have been identified for the treatment of patients. These drugs were repurposed because they were used before for other strains of Ebola viruses, but it happens that in the test that they have some efficacy on also this strain of Bundibugyo strain. So we have as a therapeutic, so 2 monoclonal antibodies could be used, and 1 antiviral also can be used for treatment. And so these has been defined by a technical advisory group that met earlier this week. And so what we do is we make an inventory of all the things that are potentially useful or in the pipeline. And then the committee look at prioritize them using a number of criteria. So, of course, the main criteria are their safety and efficacy on this current strain. But then also we look at criteria for implementation. So we are not yet at this phase of criteria for implementation because the committee looked only at the drugs that are available. And now we will discuss with other partners and health authorities to see how we can implement them. So one very important step before implementation is really the development of a protocol to be adopted by all the partners and of course the country, and making sure that the protocol makes sense in this particular context, and also that this protocol is strict so that it protects the patient, but also allows us to gather meaningful data that can be then used also to adjust the implementation as we go. I think for in addition for the antiviral, one antiviral called Obeldesivir, we think that it could be used also for post-exposure prophylaxis, meaning given to contacts. And then this would prevent those contacts, should have they been infected by the virus, to develop the disease. And so this is a promising treatment, drug, but it has still to be implemented under a very, very strict protocol. So regarding your second question about this network for medical countermeasures, so why it is important to have those platforms? It's first because this platform is not only activated for a crisis, it works throughout the year between epidemics, and brings together all the partners that have some stake into supporting the research, but also the development and the implementation of medical countermeasures. So, and it's very important that those partnerships are not built just for crisis. They are built for all the time. But when we have a specific crisis, we activate specific groups or subgroups of this platform. And so, for instance, in the research and development, we have what we call CORCs, that are collaborative open research consortium. And we have 12 CORCs currently. And those CORCs are groups of researchers and scientists all over the world that are interested in a specific family of viruses. And so the CORC on filovirus is currently meeting as I speak. They started their meeting today at 1 and they will finish at 4. And they are discussing all the possible gaps in research that we need to fill urgently, but also looking at clinical history and evolution of the virus. They are also looking at the countermeasure that could be available and what are the criteria for prioritizing them. So the CORCs are really an essential component of this global research ecosystem for emerging pathogens. And so on vaccine, I don't know, maybe I can give the floor to Vazi if you want to talk a bit more about what has happened in the tag for vaccine.
Yeah, we also have in the room Dr. Vazimoti. He's the acting lead for the R&D blueprint. Please, over to you.
Thank you. So on the vaccines R&D tag, they met earlier this week. They are continuing their deliberations and they will be meeting again on Monday. But I think the important point to stress is that we already have, I think we need to present this and communicate this as treatment of cases and prevention of cases. So we already have something prioritized under a strict protocol for prevention of cases, and that's the oral obeldesivir that has already been mentioned. But we're still under the deliberations for the vaccines R&D tag. If there are specific questions on candidate pipeline vaccines, I can take them.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, Christian, may I please come in on the ICM? So just specifically on the IMCM net that you asked about. So in addition to what Sylvia said, indeed, this interim medical countermeasures network has been established over the last several years, and it is activated all the time. It is working all of the time, and when we do have outbreaks like this, there's much more activity. So the IMCM net covers diagnostics, therapeutics, vaccines, other health products as well. I know there's a lot of discussion around vaccines, but also want to say that there's as much emphasis on diagnostics and also on treatments as well, as you've heard. The IMCM net is fully activated on a technical level. We have different working groups. There's a meeting today for the diagnostics team, specifically to look at bringing in global, regional partners from DRC on the call to coordinate how these diagnostics can be used and what can be used. We know the gene expert isn't good for Bundibugyo virus, but there are other diagnostics that do work. And so we're wanting to make sure that those are the ones that are in the field and those can be procured, and working with our OSL partners within this as well. Yesterday, the DG convened the principals of the agencies leading work on medical countermeasures, whether it's CEPI or the Global Fund or Gates Foundation, or I shouldn't name some or else I won't name them all, but the principals of these agencies to ensure that we are all aligned and that we are all working together on this. I think this is really important. This is one of these situations where it's sort of an all hands on deck. And we want to make sure that everybody is coordinated in their action and working together, that we're all on the same page, we're holding each other's organizations and institutions accountable for the speciality that they actually have, and to ensure that we all have accurate information, up-to-date information, and that we're speaking the same language as we talk about the risks, we talk about the products, we talk about what needs to be done. So the DG convened that meeting yesterday. It was actually held here in person. RD was there as well. Chikwe was there as well. We hope to convene this group periodically to make sure that they are up to date, but they gave their full commitment as well. I should mention Gavi too, but they gave their full commitment in support of this outbreak with all of their institution and the knowledge that they have.
Thank you, and our regional director also to that.
Yeah, thank you. We have strong tools, but not all are optimized for this strain. It has to be. So this outbreak really highlights three things: the need for broader vaccine and therapies, stronger research and development pipelines, and adequate access to medical countermeasures. So this is on top of what my colleagues have said. Thank you. Back to you.
Talking about the antiviral that could be given to contacts, can you give us a timeline on when that might be available? If I understood correctly, you are now setting up a clinical trial. Does a clinical trial involve giving placebo to half the people who are in the trial, and for how long is a trial going on before this could actually be available if it turns out to be efficient? A timeline, that's my question.
Very good, thank you. And we want to start with Dr. Briand, please, yes.
So first, what we do currently is we define the protocol. How the drug will be used and as you rightly said, the different arms of the clinical trial. The plan is to have a multiple arm, and I will let Vazi explain it a little bit further, but really, so the timeline depends on two things. First is the fact that we need to agree on the protocol, and the national authorities need also to agree on this protocol. The protocol is not done by somebody in Geneva in an office. It's done jointly with experts in the field and internationally. And then we need also to make sure that the monoclonal antibody and the antivirals are available in the field. So these are negotiations that will be carried out with the manufacturers or the institution who have got the monoclonal antibodies to see how fast they can deploy those products in the field. We need also in parallel to make sure that we have people in the field able also to support the local authorities to implement the protocol. So maybe Dr. Vazi, you want to give more details on the arms of the clinical protocol? Over to you.
Yes, thank you. Just to stress, I think the most important thing is as with all of our work, our role is for WHO to support the countries. So this is very much for the national authorities to decide. But we do have all of the world's leading experts meeting together, including from within the affected areas on the protocol. Just some practical issues on next steps before proceeding. Obviously, again, any clinical trial would be integrated into the response. So that's a very, very central part of it. Secondly, there will need to be export of the study drugs from where they are currently. There will need to be, so there are export permits, there will need to be import permits that are provided by the affected countries. That usually requires an approved protocol. So the protocol, once it's developed with a lot of input from many partners, and most importantly in country, will be submitted for review by ethics committee and regulatory authority in each of the affected countries. After that is approved, then usually one proceeds with the import, unless the countries decide that can be done in parallel. So those are some practical matters. In terms of how long it would run for, that all depends on exactly what one sees. There will be an independent data safety monitoring committee that would be set up, which would look independent to the trial at how the study drug appears to be working. And as soon as it is, if we get to the point where it clearly is beneficial, then the study would be stopped and we would move beyond the study phase.
This next message is for those with faith in God. James 5:14 through 15. Is anyone among you sick? Then he must call for the elders of the church, and they are to pray over him, anointing him with oil in the name of the Lord. And the prayer offered in faith will save the one who is sick, and the Lord will raise him up. And if he has committed sins, they will be forgiven him. Now, if you do not have faith in God, if you are not a Christian, I hope you repent and believe the good news, and also know that Jesus is King. May God protect you all, your friends and family, from sickness. Amen.